how to get started, and we're going to get hopefully to try out some Nearpod lessons as well. This webinar is being recorded, so we will be able to, at the end, we're going to ask you to fill out a feedback and credit form. And in that feedback form, we'll be collecting your email addresses, and you will be getting an email from me with the recording from today, as well as the slide deck. And then anything else that I happen to mention that's not in the slide deck, I make sure that I put that in the email. It looks like everybody should be okay with presenting their name in Zoom. And if you have any questions, as Kate just mentioned, there are plenty of people who can respond to those who are from the digital learning team. And so they will, kind of stop me and say, hey, Christina, slow down, or can you repeat that? And so we'll ask that you keep yourselves muted as participants and just ask questions written in the chat. And you can find that chat at the bottom of your screen, on the bottom of your Zoom window. And you can just hit the chat button, and that's where you can find the slide deck as well. And Kate, you can just skip over the agenda. Thanks. Okay, so you do. I stole this slide from Kate, and Casey's face is on it, so I gave her a little mask because I didn't want her to be mad at me for posting her face everywhere. So this is good for towards the end today, where I'm going to first just kind of show you the back end part of Nearpod and how to get there and things like that from the teacher perspective and the teacher point of view. And then I'm going to have you participate as students so that you get to have that student experience as well. And so we'll leave time for both of those. So when that time does come and I ask you to revert back to clicking some links or finding some information in this slideshow, it is helpful for you to have the two screens open at the same time. But for right now, we can sort of just leave that because we're going to save that for the end. So Kate, if you could go to nearpod.com. And I'm just going to walk us through, this will be interesting. I'm just going to walk us through how to use Nearpod and some of the features that are in there. And then we'll get to sort of try it out. What's really nice is right now, any Boston Public School teacher can sign up to get access to the more kind of like premium version of Nearpod. So you have access to pretty much the full Nearpod library right now, and I do have that in the slide deck, and I'll walk you guys through how to get access to that if you don't have it now. So here we are in Nearpod. Now, Kate automatically was logged in to Nearpod, and so what you can do is it's one of those log in with Google. So when you log in with Google, just make sure that you're logging in with your Boston Public Schools email address. That's especially important if you go through the process to sign up to get free access. It will automatically be linked to your Boston Public Schools, so you want to make sure that you're signing in with Google. Now, one thing about Nearpod is when you first log in, I'm just going to kind of navigate with the screen that you're seeing Kate project right now. It automatically is going to take you to My Library. Now, this is something that is a kind of a quirky feature about Nearpod because it automatically kind of defaults to going to your library as opposed to the Nearpod lesson library, which has like a whole bunch of different lessons. So if you search, like you can see it says My Library and then you can search, that's only going to search within your own library. These are lessons that you have saved. And it isn't really a great place to search because it's only stuff that you've already sort of looked at in their bigger library. So I would suggest just each time that you log into Nearpod, that you're automatically going to the Nearpod lesson library if you're looking for a new lesson to try out with your students. So Kate, if you can click on that left-hand side, it's right underneath the code, Nearpod lesson library. And through this Nearpod lesson library, there are a few ways that you can search for lessons. You can see on the left-hand side that you can choose by a topic, and you can choose by grade level and the different resource types, things like that. You can also search in the middle there, where you can see that there's the Nearpod lesson library, and really just search for like your topic, and you can narrow it down by grade level. And then this is where I tend to fall into the Nearpod rabbit hole, as I call it. They have this banner up at the top where it gives you, you know, some lessons that have been curated by Nearpod for different topics and things like that. So I've been playing around with it the past couple of days, and you know, they have all these like distance learning picks, and then you can go through. So they have some really good stuff. And then they have this underneath that sort of featured space here. So if you look at where it says featured and then Nearpod VR by Nearpod, you know, those are different topics, and those are changing all the time. So what I'm going to have Kate do now is just go into top ELA. I want to show you how, and this is true for each one of the topic areas. What this will sort of look like is very similar for each of those topic areas. So now you can see, if you look at the reading comprehension one, you can see how many lessons are in this kind of, they call it like a bundle. Who's created these lessons? Is it created by a teacher, or is it created by the curated and created by the Nearpod team? And then over on the side is who are these lessons made for? And so within this bundle, you'll see that there will be lessons for K through 12. So Kate, if you could just click into the reading comprehension. And now you can see that they separated out by grade strand. So Kate, can you click on 3 to 5? And then now if you hover over that 4 to 5 English language arts, you can click on that one, Kate.
This one?
Yeah.
It's a little slow.
Don't restart your computer. Okay, so now I've taken a look at this, and I want to see if it's going to work for me and for my students. So there, before I add it to my own Nearpod library, I can preview this. Kate, I'm sorry, it's not part of a bundle, is it? Just scroll down.
No, I mean,
can you just scroll down? Is there anything underneath that? No. Okay. So here you can preview the lesson. So you can see it from the student's point of view. And so what I like to do is, if you just click through, Kate, you'll notice that it gives you this about this lesson. Sometimes the about this lesson is they might have like in the beginning here, it's like an about this lesson, and then they might have like a lesson plan attached. And that is really made for you as the teacher. And then you can go in, and I'll show you how to edit in a moment. So if you just click through, yeah. They always have an essential question, learning objectives, and then they have you get started. Now, all of this is editable right now for you. So if you add this to your library, we're not gonna do that just yet, but when you add this to your library, you will have the option to edit. And what's really cool about that is that if you want to add in some learning objectives, or if you want to add in a language objective, stuff like that, you have the ability to do that. Oh, Kate, sorry, can you just go back to where we were? So you can change any of these slides. Now, this particular lesson has this sort of VR capability, and they call it virtual reality, but you can view this on any device. And you'll know that it's one of those virtual reality lessons because of this symbol. It sort of looks like these little VR goggles here. And you'll see those even in like the search areas, or if it asks for, if you like click on VR as you are searching. So that will kind of denote that this lesson has that capability. And then the next slide, please. And these VRs are really cool. So it gives students the ability to really kind of look at a specific place. They do like these 360 views. One of the ones that we're going to be exploring in a little bit is going to have like even more in-depth little goggles within the VR situation, so you can like really kind of get down to ground level when you're looking at things. They do virtual field trips with this, so the possibilities are endless, and you can actually zoom in like super close, and you can zoom out. And then Kate, if you could go to the next slide. A lot of times with these pre-made lessons, it will then have an open-ended question that gives students the opportunity to then reflect on what they just saw. So these open-ended, this is one thing that you can add in, or that are already built into a lot of the Nearpod lessons, are these open-ended questions. So that's one feature, again, that you can add in, or that might already be there for some of the lessons that you're previewing. Can you go to the next slide, please? I like the way that they set up their lessons a lot of the time. And they're nice to sort of think about modeling if you're creating your own lessons. So if you go back one slide, it says like it now, okay, like let's learn. So they sort of like separate it out into like explore and learn. So that's something that you can change, but it's, I think, kind of a nice feature. Okay, that's a great question. If you go back, Kate, to the open-ended question slide. If you go back, yeah, to the one that was like 3, yeah, there we go, just wait for it, it'll come up, yeah. So what happens is, this is what the students will see. This is a preview, but this is what it'll look like for the students. It actually gives them this. And so on their device, they're going to have a slide that's interactive where they type right in this box. And then you as the teacher are going to get a report at the end of the lesson, seeing how the students responded. And you can see all of your students and how they responded. So they do that right there.
Can I add on that though, Christina? Because you don't have to see it just in the report, right?
Right. Yeah. So during the lesson, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of that part where you can actually share. I know you'll probably do it in a minute, but you can actually share a certain student if you wanted everyone to see that work and talk about it. So there is like a board that we'll see later.
Yeah, that's a different one for sure.
Keep going.
All right. Yes, I'm coming back online here, so this will be nice, a nice little transition, so we can try out some of this stuff. So then there's all these like sort of different activities and things that you can add into these slides to make them interactive. We are going to explore some of those in a little bit that you're going to get to try out, and you're going to get to kind of create your own as well. So we're going to skip over this one because this is just an example of one of those activities. And you can do like multiple slides. This is a nice one. This is like a draw it type thing. So you can actually like put up a graphic organizer, have the kids either type or draw inside of it, which is really, really kind of cool as well. All right. So what I'm going to ask people to do, I'm going to pause right now because I actually am back up. And so what I want to do is give people an opportunity to actually interact with a live lesson. So Kate, can you go back to my slide deck?
Oops. Yeah, hold on, not that one.
And thank you everybody for bearing with me. This is definitely not how I had this set up originally. If you could go back to that slide, Kate, please. Thanks so much. So we're going to talk right now about a live lesson versus a student-paced lesson. I'm bringing this up now because we are actually going to kind of do an experiment here with you going into a live lesson. And there are two different types of lessons that you can assign to your students from Nearpod. One is called live lesson. This is teacher-led and controlled. So if we're doing a live lesson, then as my computer, as I'm like viewing it on my computer and I go to the next slide, all of your computers are going to go to the next slide at that same time. We're all working at the exact same time on each of the slides. So if it's an interactive slide and you're writing responses, we're all in that slide together. And then we're all giving our responses at the same time. That's really nice if the teacher's there and you're guiding and you want to kind of have those discussions. Maybe you're kind of doing it on Zoom. And then you can kind of pause and have discussions, things like that. Student-paced is also something we're going to try out. Student-paced is something that you as a teacher can assign, and then the students do it at their own pace. So they still have all the same features. It's just that you're not controlling which slides students are going to in that moment. I am going to go into reports and things once we do a live lesson. I'll be able to show you on my screen what that looks like. So if everybody could please go to, if you go to the next slide, Kate, if everybody could please go to nearpod.com. And the code is up on Kate's screen. This is going to be a live lesson that we're all going to do together. And Kate also put that in the chat. Thank you, Kate. Now, when you go to nearpod.com, you don't need to sign in or anything at all. Great question. So to minimize the screen, you want to double click on Kate's screen or click on it and press the escape button at the top left-hand side of your keyboard. And then it's going to ask you for a code when you're in Nearpod. And that code is the code that you
Oh wait, is there a different?
given. It just says join a lesson right there.
Oh, I'm missing it. I thought there was another website, another address that you went to. Okay, here it is.
Yep, so you just add that code in there. And
yeah, if you've ever logged in before, it kept logging me in. I had to log out to get there. And you don't want to log in through Clever because you're joining. So just like I did, I was already logged in. I had to log out in order to get to the screen. So this does mean that students, you want to prompt them to put their real name in because they don't actually have to put their real name in. I'm going to put my real name.
all right. All right, Kate, I am popping in. Can you make me host and I will take over?
Oops.
All right.
And then you'll have to go back and make me co-host. I'm so sorry.
That is okay. Here. Oh, actually, Kate, can you make my other one? I'm logged in twice here. Can you make the one that's capitalized the host, please?
Mm. Oh wait, I can make myself. All right. Okay. So can everyone hear me okay? All right. We're back in the game. Thank you everybody so much for your patience. All right, so I hope that everybody was able to get into the Nearpod lesson. And I'm gonna share my screen here. And get into Nearpod. So this is a good opportunity for you to have kind of both screens side by side, where you can see your screen and you're getting the student experience. I'm also going to be walking you through the teacher experience as well. So on my screen, you'll see that it automatically took me to my library. And you can see some of the ones that I've done before. Now, we are going to be looking at exploring Earth. Because I already set this up for you, when I hit on live lesson, it has this already sort of ready to launch. And so me going in and resuming, it will give me this opportunity here to share this code with the group. I'm actually gonna go all the way back over and show you just on my screen some of the features here. So I'm going to be taking my way. So first, as the teacher, now you as a student are not seeing any of what's on my screen, but I can see the names that everybody put in. So to Kate's point earlier, if you know, a student puts in something that might not be appropriate, or you know, you reminded them, hey, like no nicknames, like I need to be able to know, especially for the reporting, be able to know who responded in order for them to get credit. You can take a look at that here. You'll notice that I can see that there are 45 students in my class, and it's red. It's red because there are people who might be on another tab, and it could just be that they're looking at my Zoom screen right now, but it actually shows if they're not being active in the presentation, and it's not the tab that they have open. So you'll notice as I'm clicking through, your screen is moving as well. That's because this is a live lesson. You'll see that there are multiple slides within this piece. And that's an option. And then this is your collaboration board. So you can see as a teacher, it says this is a slide as a collaborate board. Would you like to approve student comments before they're posted? This is completely up to you. You know your students best. And then you can also make the choice and then click this button to apply it to the slides for the rest of the session. So if there are any other collaborate boards, I'm gonna say no to this, and it's gonna say no automatically to any of the other ones. So now, I hope this answers the question that came up before about how students respond. So I would like everybody to, you don't have to really write anything in here, just put your first and last name just so that you can see
what the students will see and also what the teacher will see on my screen and how that comes up. Notice that here you can also put in a picture if you wanted to. So it's similar to Padlet if you're familiar with that. And then you can go through and you can see what your classmates have posted, and you can go through and like those as well. Now, anything that goes in here, when I go to the next slide, is going to save automatically for me, and it'll go into my reports. But this is what Kate was referring to, where you can also see in real time, and then also for the open response, you can see real time, and I can project that onto the screen. So a lot of times, I like to be able to show the students my screen as well. For some of those, if I want to maybe project for the students what other people have written. Okay, so now on here, it's going to ask you this question and you're going to explain. Again, there's no need to actually answer the question, but if you want to go ahead and put in your name again, just to get a feel for what the students see. And then also you'll get to see what I see as the teacher. So this is one of those open response. Mine obviously looks different because I'm the teacher, but I can see in real time who has responded and who has not. And then if I'm like, wow, I really love Haruna's answer. Of course, she actually wrote an answer. I love it. I can hit share, and now look, it's sharing on each of your screens. So now it's kind of taking over your screen, and I'm like, okay, this is how Haruna answered. How can we maybe edit our answers to be similar to Haruna's or to have as much detail as Haruna's? And then I just click that again, and I unshare. I can also see how many people have participated at this time. And I have this option here. So if I am sharing it and I don't want to put anybody, out there, I can actually hide student names. And we can look at people's responses without seeing their names. And I can share people's responses without it having their name. These slides here are kind of just static slides like you would find in, Google Slides or PowerPoint. And so like they're usually mostly just for presenting information. Now this has a virtual tour as well. It gives some kind of instructions on how they should be looking. And then I can, within this photograph, I can go to different stops. So for you as the student, I'm going to give you a moment to just sort of explore this. Take a look at what the students would see. Go a little bit more in depth and play around with it, because this is really kind of cool. So I'll give people about 1 minute to sort of just play around and look at the different stops in your VR tour. Okay, I'm gonna move on and I'm gonna move you along as well. I know this isn't nearly enough time to see how cool this is because it is a really cool feature, but there's a lot to see in Nearpod, and I wanna make sure that I get people good to go for being able to set this up on your own as well. So that's just another open response. Here's another corkboard, more open responses. And then there's the end. Now,
hey, Christina, can I jump in with a question from the chat that might be,
absolutely.
I don't know the answer.
Yep.
Can you kick a student out? Like say you have a student that doubled up by mistake. Can you, thank you, yeah. So if you see a student wasn't on their phone and like I did, I'm actually in there twice, once on my phone and once on my computer, you could delete me. Okay, thank you.
I've also deleted if I didn't like the nickname that they used.
Yeah.
I'm like, nope, because that's not what the instruction was. And I'll just boot them out and then they have to get back in order to participate. So definitely had to do that before. Now, let's say I'm on a slide and we're having this like great conversation. And I'm like, okay, I want to hear from everybody, but I don't have a question. Or I'm like, oh, like I want to be able to like add something in or add a link. I can add activity on the fly and add in a slide, which is really, really kind of cool here. Then this feature here, I can actually switch as the teacher to the student view and I can see what you guys are seeing. And then here where it says Nearpod, there's this little down arrow. And here's where I can see reports. Now I can see that from my dashboard as well, but if I want to pull the report during the lesson, so I can go back and see how all my students answered something, 4 slides ago without moving everybody back 4 slides, I can hit reports and then it'll send me an email with the report. The code is always going to be up here. So if you have a student who gets kicked out or their computer dies or whatever the case may be, throughout your presentation, the code is going to be listed here. And you can make it big and you can actually give a specific link to it as well at any point in time during your presentation. To get out of the presentation, you're going to hit this out arrow. Do you want to leave the session? You can resume it later. This is really important. So you can say yes. And I'll show you why. Let's say you have 4 sections of the same class and you're going to be doing this 4 times. What you're going to want to do is generate 4 different codes. So whenever you start a live lesson, you can launch a new one, which is going to activate a new code, or you can go back to one that you've done before. I would make the recommendation that, let's say this is going to be over 2 days, you have 4 sections. Your code, you might want to just write down the code and how that goes to which section. So like I might write myself a note and say, okay, AMLED is for homeroom 316. And then when I go back tomorrow and I have a list of 4 different codes, I can just look at my little list and say, oh yeah, okay, so that live lesson AMLED was homeroom 316. Okay, great. If I click launch a new live lesson, you'll see that it gives me a new code. So this would be for the next class that you see. Okay, I have 318 next. I'm going to launch a new live lesson. Here's my new code. I get out of that. So that's a great question. It changes the code every time you go on. That's absolutely right. So if I click on live lesson, now I have these 2 here. If I wanted to use the same code for all my classes, I wouldn't hit launch a new live lesson. I would click on this one and just use the same code with everybody. But my recommendation would be to make a different code for each one of your sections that you see, because the responses and things, it can get a little bit messy if you have 100 kids in one lesson. So now I'm like, okay, I know this is for 316, this is for 318, and so on and so forth. And then I can resume that lesson.
Christina, there was another question about extending the time because it said 14 days. Is that something you can do?
So I believe that it expires in 14 days from like the last time you used it. So you wouldn't be able to extend it unless you were to log in and like start it again. So if I was to click on this tomorrow, it will say 13 days and then I click on it and I start it, it's going to go back to 14 days. It's just like of inactivity. Okay. So now I'm in my library, and you have the option to either create your own, or to, if you went in and you searched in the Nearpod lesson library, you found something that worked for you, or it kind of worked for you, but you wanted to add some stuff into, you can also edit. So let me show you how to add something into your library. This is important to notice because it is sort of an extra, in my opinion, like not super intuitive step. So here I am. Let's go back to that one that I pulled us out of before when my computer came back on. Okay. So when I hover over a lesson, it's going to give me this option to preview the lesson. So I'm going to click on that and preview. You always are going to preview before, even if you don't want to go through the whole thing. It's always going to take you into this sort of preview screen. And if it's something that you like and you want to use with your class after you've gone through the preview, you have to hit add to my library. This share, think of this one in the preview, if you're going to share from here, you're only sharing it with like a colleague who you're like, oh, this might be a cool lesson for you to use in your class. This is not the share that is going to go to your students. So once I hit add to my library, it's going to download and it's going to tell me it's in my library, because then it changes itself to show in my library. This is a very small detail that people tend to overlook and then aren't sure where the lesson is, or they're like, no, but I previewed it, like where is it? It's not in my library. Because you have to make sure that you click on that add to my library piece. So now I'm viewing this in my library. Nothing really changed except that now it says my library over here, and I can still preview it, but I'm viewing it in my library. So it's like sort of like now I'm owning it. And I can choose. I can, right from here, do a live lesson or a student-paced lesson, or I can edit it. I'm going to click on edit. Now you have an option. You can duplicate the lesson or edit it. If you edit the lesson, it's not going to change the lesson for everybody else who uses Nearpod. It's only going to change it within your library. The reason you may want to duplicate it is if maybe for one class, you're just going to use the original lesson, but for another class, maybe you want to add in some supports. And so that's why you would want to duplicate it. It's only what's living in your library, so you can easily just hit edit lesson. It's not going to change it for the rest of the Nearpod world. It's only going to change it within your library. It's almost like when you add it to your library, it makes its own special copy for you to live in your library. So now that I hit edit, I can see all the slides that are in here already, that those are already kind of created by Nearpod. So I can see where things are. I can drag and drop if I like, if I want something in one place and not the other. I can delete a slide, and I can add a slide. So I'm going to show you how to add a slide. And there are some options. I also put some tips and things in the slide deck for when you're doing each one of these. But we're going to look at adding content first. And you have a whole bunch of options here. So when you're adding content, you can add a static slide. So you can add a slide that just has like pictures and writing, like some of the examples that we saw. You can also add a slide that has like a video inside of it, or audio. You can choose from some, they're third party that have partnered with Nearpod, so you can add in some things that are kind of cool and interactive. I'm not going to go in depth into each of these, but if it's something that maybe you've used before or you're more interested in, I would definitely click through and they give you some options. You could do the Nearpod 3D from their library of 3D images. Same thing with Nearpod Field Trip. It's basically that VR experience, different places in the world, and you can choose from those. For math, you have a graphing calculator. For PhET, this is these different simulations for science. And so when you click on these, you would then search from that third party's library of resources and then add in content from there into yours. Those other ones that we saw that had multiple slides sort of in together, they call that a slideshow. You can add in a video. Here you go for audio, PDF, and a live Twitter stream. So you have a whole bunch of options to add content. Then you can also add in activities. This is where, this is an interactive game that we're gonna hopefully be able to practice one of those for the student view. An open-ended question. We did a bunch of those in the last one. You can have it do matching pairs. You can have a quiz, which is actually really cool, the quiz, because you'll set up the quiz and then in the reports, it'll give you the grade, and you can actually see in real time too how your students did on the quiz. You can, this is kind of new, you can add in a Flipgrid activity, which is for students, you would pose, you as a teacher would pose a question or a prompt, and the students respond using video. Draw it. You can put in like a graphic organizer sort of as the background, and then you can write in on it. Collaborate is that little cork board that we did earlier. You can poll students. You can do a fill in the blank and a memory test. So those are all different options that you have when you're creating or adding slides. A lot of the slide decks that are already created in Nearpod have these interactive features built in. And as you move through and you get more used to it, you'll be able to tell kind of right away if it's an open-ended question or if it's a draw it, or and how those are used. So I've definitely like gone through the Nearpod created ones to kind of get ideas on how to use each of these. So I would recommend going into the Nearpod library and doing some like fall down that Nearpod rabbit hole and get familiar with some of the features in there. That's a great way to do it, by previewing already created content. Okay, so I'm gonna go back out to my library. Now, you would think that clicking on here would take you to that Nearpod library, that home. It doesn't. I would avoid clicking on this. This is like basically I want to sell you Nearpod, so not something that you want to be clicking right now. Always going back to your library. From your library is going to be that menu on this left-hand side. And then as a teacher, if you're logged in your account and you still want to join a lesson, like if like you're in our training like this, and I'm like, oh yeah, if you logged in, let's say through Clever, and you were logged in as the teacher, because you logged in through Clever, you still can join a lesson here. And then the school and district library, it would depend on who has like access, sort of like the admin access, if they've curated anything for you in the school library. I curated some stuff like when I would work with teachers doing coaching stuff in the school library, but that's not really something that you need all the time. And then here you can find reports. So this is where all of any lesson that you've ever run, all of the reports are going to live here, and you'll have access to those here. And then they have their little help center here. All right. So I'm going to pause because I just gave you a lot of information. I also put some tips in the slide deck. So if you're not sure about something that I said, I tried to make sure I put some tips in here for you as well. Also, some of the options that you have for like once you actually have found a lesson, remembering to add it to your library and showing it in your library, and what options you have for editing. So this is more of a, something that you want to hang on to the slide deck for some reference. All right, before I move into practicing a student PACE lesson, I want to just point out a couple more slides on here. I mentioned to you before about that free temporary membership that Boston Public Schools teachers have access to right now. So if you want to use Nearpod in your classes and you want that unlimited access, you're going to register for free by signing up here. I did it to see like how it worked. And I'd say either the next morning or later that afternoon, I got an email saying you're all set. Click here, and it was automatically registered with my Boston Public Schools email address. It was awesome. And then here's a help doc on how to access Nearpod. And so this is just another resource for you for later on. All right, now I promise I am going to pause. If there's any pressing questions, I can answer those either individually, or is there anything that I need to answer as a whole group, Kate?
Yeah, there's a couple that came up. So can we add, I believe we can add a recording, your audio voice to everything, but just to be sure, is there anything you can't add your audio voice to?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I've never come across that before, that you couldn't.
Okay, the other one was video. And so I don't think, so you can't automatically do video in Nearpod, but you can create a video. Like say you did Screencastify and you made a video of yourself. So that was for ASL. Like you could do that video and then you upload it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm correct, there's nowhere in Nearpod you can actually just click make a video and it will do it for you, right? I don't think so.
Right.
Okay.
So, I've never done that. Like, you mean like a live video where like, you know, on Padlet you can like just like record it like right then and there.
Right. Yeah. Like just.
Yeah. No. That's not there yet. The only way that, so as a teacher, there's no real way to do that. Like if I was to add content.
Like, so you can add audio, yeah, but you can't add video.
Upload it, or I can search from YouTube right in here. I'm gonna check out something else while people are working to see if there's another option, but I don't want to take up too much of that. The only other one.
Oh yeah, Chandler's writing about, I have not tried this yet, but they had an extension that was linking you to Google Slides. So you make slideshows and then it would, but I have not used that.
It's awesome. I love it. And you don't even need so like you can have the extension, but it's actually awesome now because it's like right built in here. So you can make a lesson in Google Slides and you can just import it right into Nearpod. So you can make it look really cool. Because I will say, and I even heard this from Nearpod themselves when I was first learning about Nearpod, that their slide editor is not great. So they actually recommend that you do this. So you go into Google Slides, you create something, and then it'll automatically go right in. Or you can do it right from scratch, and it gives you a step-by-step instruction on how to make a Nearpod lesson in Slides, and then it'll automatically upload it into Nearpod.
So, but you would do these lessons in Nearpod, you would actually deliver the lesson in Nearpod, not in Google Slides?
Yep, so you're creating it, and then when you go back to Nearpod, I don't know if we'll do it right now. When you go back to Nearpod, that will be a Nearpod lesson, and then you can edit it and you can add in. So here's my unsaved one. Like I didn't really do anything in this one, but this is the one I just opened by clicking on lesson in Google Slides. And then if I edit it, now I can go in through Nearpod and add in those interactive features. So a lot of times I would just do a shell of like what I wanted my presentation to look like. And then I would just add in Nearpod types of slide, like add in Nearpod features.
Okay. So I think what Chandler's talking about is an extension, but that might be, I think that's different, like an actual extension, but.
I'll get on.
Yeah.
It makes it so like if you edit right into your Google slide, the extension pulls up all of those things you can add in Nearpod. So you can edit your Google Slides, and so like I made a do now, and then I added my like my Nearpod whatever, my do now, where they could type in. And then I made another slide. It makes it so you don't have to make the shell and then go into Nearpod and then add those things in separately. Like I could just make them all at the same time.
Yeah, so that's these instructions right here.
Yeah.
So here's how it works. So open and install the Nearpod add-on. And then that's when you would be adding in those features there. So this is the instructions for what Chandler's talking about.
Nice.
And that was automatic when I went and just added it from Nearpod. Okay, but I wanted people to get the opportunity to try out one that is a student-paced lesson. So I'm going to give people the last kind of like, let's give them like 4 minutes to at least like practice that one.
Hi, I have a quick question. I am trying to sign up for the free account for this is Cassandra at the Curly, and it says the link that you gave us, it has your email information on there. Nearpod license for virtual learning during school closure. It has your email. Is it this directly to you, or when I click on it, it will allow me to sign up?
And when you click on it, it'll allow you to sign up.
Okay, perfect. I was a little scared.
I had just pulled that from that help doc. So
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's give people an opportunity to try the student-paced version of the lesson. So you're going to go back to Nearpod. Kate, can you just mute people? If you go back to nearpod.com and put in this one, you'll be able to see the difference. So I'm going to show it on my screen and what I'm seeing as the teacher, but for you as the student, you're going to be able to move through it freely and at your own pace, whereas before I was moving it along for you. So I'll give people an opportunity to do that. While that's happening, we're also going to put in the feedback form in the chat. So that is something that you'll want to complete relatively soon so that we can make sure that we get the email out to you with the slide deck and the recording of today, as well as be able to give you credit for attending our webinar and give you 1 hour towards your 5 hours of professional development. And so just to talk you guys through what I'm doing on my screen, if you are following along with me. Here it looks a little bit different because this is a student-paced lesson. So instead of starting it as the teacher, I can just view the progress of my individual students, which is really kind of cool. So I can see who has logged in. And then I can scroll through and see who has started answering questions. So you may want to provide like a due date for your students to have to finish this by. And then, you know, this is when you would go through it, or you can look at the report again at any time. We give people another minute or so to just kind of scroll through this one on their own.
And then Christina, can I add our office hours tomorrow? So if people are doing some of this work and they need some help or are feeling, you know, any hiccups you get or are frustrated, we have office hours. Sometimes we call it office hours or webinar support. And those are just drop-in hours. Tomorrow it's from 1 to 2, and you can get that on that website. Drop in and just ask questions and we'll help you out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. And also, I'm going to be sending everybody who's here today an email probably either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. I just have to wait until the video renders, and then I'll be sending that out to you with the recording from today for your reference. Feel free to respond back to me. I know we had a rocky start, so I probably didn't get to every single question, everything at the beginning and at the end today, but you know, go through it on your own. You know, do some of like the searching and try to edit it, and then just shoot me an email if you have any questions, and we can set up some time to go through it together. And I'm happy to do that, especially since we had a rocky start today. So let me know, and in my email signature I have my Calendly that you can set up one-on-one time with me, and I'm happy to go through this with anybody who wants it. Please feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat. And then finally, I had this other Try It, which is a gamified quiz. It's called Time to Climb. This is really kind of fun, and it's cool to get that student experience of this. So feel free to go into this on your own, put in this code, and try out the game. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And I hope to hear from everybody soon. Oh,
Yeah.
hi, Lee. I didn't see you were in here.
This was our last webinar, right? We don't have any more today.
Yeah, actually, that's true. You're right. So if there's any burning questions as you're going through, I will stay on actually for a little bit. So if you won't have to go, I'm going to stay on.